This video is actually sponsored by Faulty Wagon. Thank you so much to Faulty Wagon for buying me new XLR cables because I greatly needed those. If you want to check out Faulty Wagon, check him out on YouTube. I'll leave that in the description. Before we start the review, I just want to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, or whenever this review ends up coming out. I just want to say I know I've taken a long time to make this review. I know that I have been enjoying the holidays like most of us, and it is time for me to review this game. I have taken long enough, so let's get right into it. Lost Judgment is the latest entry into the Yakuza spin-off series Judgment. I love the first game, and if you watch my first review, you'll know that. And if you haven't checked out the first review, go check that out and then come back to this one. After playing the first game, I knew I had to immediately jump right into the second game because a couple months before Lost Judgment had already come out, and at the time that I was playing Judgment, it already came out. So after I finished the first game, I knew that I had to jump right into the sequel. And we get to play as Yagami once again, our favorite lawyer turned detective. And this time around, this game revolves around a sexual assault case where a man named Ehara groped a woman in a train station and is convicted of being a sexual predator. But after his conviction, he reveals that there is going to be a dead body that is going to be uncovered in Yokohama. And if you recognize Yokohama, it's basically where Yakuza 7 takes place most of the time. Yagami is already in Yokohama. He was investigating a bullying case at a private high school, and turns out there is a link between this dead body and the high school that Yagami is currently investigating. The dead body turns out to be a student teacher, and now it's up to Yagami to find this dark link between the student teacher's death and the bullying cases at the private high school. It's like, I'm gonna say it, Lost Judgment has cemented itself as its own franchise. I really do feel like now Judgment had set itself apart from the Yakuza series, because in the first game you could kind of see some of like the similar elements in terms of story, but this time they really decided to take this into a completely different direction, and I am happy to say that I'm loving this direction that they're going for. I love this even more darker tone, because I know I love like the whole like over the top scenarios in Yakuza, but I really do appreciate how this is more grounded. This feels a little bit more realistic in some ways, and I say that very loosely because there's still a lot of like crazy situations, but I really do love Yagami's character. I love the world. I love these new characters, and hopefully they try to continue this franchise, because I know there's this whole like dispute between the agency and SEGA. Hopefully they look past that and maybe make more games about this. Lost Judgment really does feel like two different games, because you have your main story that focuses on the private high school and the Ehara case, and then you have like this side story kind of thing called School Stories. Yagami basically becomes the advisor for the MRC Club, the Mystery Research Club, where Yagami and the only member, Amasawa, basically you and her are supposed to figure out who this professor is. Like, the professor is like this figure that uses the internet for students to use, and for some reason it is using specific students in order to lead them into a life of crime. And now it's up to Yagami to infiltrate all these clubs in order to find out pieces and find out more information on who might be the professor. I enjoyed the School Stories. I thought it was a new addition. It was a new thing that they were trying. I really did enjoy a lot of it. It did come with a bunch of different mini games like boxing, which had its own moveset, which was a lot of fun. You had robotics, which was basically like a glorified version of Tetris, where you have 3 different robots and your opponent has 3 different robots, and you get little pieces and you connect them on the board, and if you capture their side first, you win, or if you capture most of the arena and you win. I loved this robotics mode because it had a bunch of customization. It reminded me a lot of the Pocket Circuit, in Yakuza 0 and Yakuza 1, where you can get a bunch of different components. You can get a different like robots. You can do different like play styles. You can do different like settings. There's a bunch of customization here for you to make your own play style, and I really did enjoy this because they put a lot of effort into this mini game, and I could see it, and I really had a lot of fun with this one. And then you had stuff like the photography club where you could take pictures. You have there was like the gaming club where you play Virtua Fighter 5, and then you have my personal favorite was the dancing club, because you had like the dance mini game. I love this one specifically, and this is probably my favorite because it reminded me a lot of Yakuza 5 with Haruka's gameplay, where it was a lot of like dancing. There was a lot of like catchy music, and that was my favorite part about this. I really did love the music in this. It was very catchy. This is an element I felt like it was lacking in Judgment, because Yakuza has karaoke and it has been its main staple for years now, and I feel like if dancing becomes like Judgment's thing, I would be happy with that, because it has a lot of catchy music and it was a ton of fun. Like School Stories has its own story within itself, and it was okay. It was nothing really special. It was just kind of a side thing that they put together. One thing about it that I really did enjoy was the bond between Yagami and Amasawa. I liked this whole like teacher-student bond. I liked the interactions with the students. It was something completely different. I really liked the relationships between all the students, and overall it was okay. It had some like problems here and there in terms of like pacing, but overall I thought it was a nice addition, because it does replace a lot of like the side missions that usually come with Yakuza, because I know usually you get a bunch of side missions, which can be a little intimidating at first to like get through most of it. I know that's how I felt when I first started playing these games, but this is a lot more approachable. It is very lengthy. I think my total runtime of this game was like 70 hours, and like maybe 20 hours was like this whole School Stories thing, so it is pretty lengthy. So I'm just letting you know now, but it was worth it overall, and I really do appreciate this new addition and this new approach that they're taking on extra content for the game. Yokohama is huge, and when I first saw Yokohama, I realized that there might have been a potential problem of terms of travel. I know there's taxis, but that costs money, and in this game for some reason money is way harder to get. So when I saw this, I was a little worried on being discouraged on moving around, because I know that's how I felt when I played Red Dead Redemption 2, where everything is just so far away that you get discouraged. But the saving grace for this is the skateboard. Basically, you get a skateboard and you can ride around, get from point A to B super quickly. You can even like do tricks on the way there. I thought this was a cool addition because you kind of get tired of running everywhere. So this was like really nice addition for you to basically travel the city and explore the city as fast as you can at your own leisure, really. And this also comes with its own minigame as well. This is also part of the School Stories, where Yagami goes to like a skate park and you do tricks and you get points, and with these points you could buy items, you could buy better skateboards, have better acceleration and better max speed. And I just like this addition a lot, because after playing so many of these games and just running everywhere, this was a nice change of pace. In the first game, Judgment, I know I gave a lot of crap on the combat because it was severely lacking. And I have to say, in this game, I'm so glad that they overhauled the combat. I am so glad that they decided to make combat way better. It is so good, in fact, that this might possibly be one of the best in terms of combat in all of the Yakuza series games and the Judgment ones. I really do think that this compares to like Yakuza 0's combat. There's a lot of moves for you to use. There's a bunch of heat moves. There's a bunch of different combos for you to try out. It was just amazing, the combat. You have your Tiger Stance and your Crane Stance from the first game, and they are greatly improved. The Tiger Stance feels a little bit more faster, feels a little more fluid. So was the Crane Stance, because the Crane Stance was a piece of shit in the first game. It was very rough. There was basically the same moveset for the entire game. In this game, they gave it more love. They gave it more work. It feels a little bit more fluid. There's more moves for you to work with. It feels a little bit faster. And there's also a new stance for you to try out. It is called Snake Stance. The Snake Stance is basically a combination of Tiger and Crane, where Tiger is close quarters and Crane is for crowd control. For Snake, you can basically do both. You can grapple enemies, you can disarm enemies, you can parry. I love the Snake Stance because it reminded me of Majima's Breaker Stance from Yakuza 0, where it just dominates the battlefield, and it was a ton of fun to use. I love the Snake Stance, especially like at boss fights. The Snake Stance just dominates because you can just counter everything. You basically become untouchable when using the Snake Stance, especially that parry. That parry is so easy to pull off. I thought it was amazing because I can't express how well the combat is. It's more fluid. It doesn't feel as clunky. The switching between stances is super quick, which is great if you want to do combos, especially like air combos and stuff like that. Because I know in the first game, switching stances was a hassle. It was really lengthy in terms of transitioning. It was basically you had to stick with one stance the entire fight because there was no really room for you to switch between stances. And in this one, it's super fast, it's super seamless, and it might be a little too fast at times because if you press the button too fast, you can actually switch between multiple stances and you accidentally mess up your combo. That's the only gripe I have with it. But other than that, there's so many moves. It's easy to find moves everywhere because I know in the first game some of the moves were very hard to find. In this one, it's more convenient. You get a lot more XP faster. You get a bunch of different upgrades faster depending on how you play the game. Because how I play it, I grind out everything and I get everything super quickly and everything becomes accessible. But in this one, even if you don't do that, you can basically get everything relatively quickly. Hidden arts are the specific buffs that every stance gets and gives you an advantage in battle. For Tiger, you get stronger charge attacks. For Crane, you get a speed boost. And for Snake, you become more invulnerable to attacks where they can knock you down and you become unconscious for a couple of seconds, which that can be very useful in boss fights especially. Because this game is actually kind of hard. Boss fights especially, they do a ton of damage on you if you're not careful. But overall, I think that this hidden arts becomes way more essential because when you max them out to their maximum potential, you can actually switch your stances and keep the effects. And especially if you use the Crane stance where you get like a speed boost, your other stances become way faster and you basically just dominate your enemies with fast movement. I'm so surprised on how broken these stances can get when you apply this speed boost, because usually sometimes I'm like, maybe the combat could be a little bit faster, but if it was at this speed, the game would have been way too easy, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't do that. And there is actually a secret fourth stance. It's the boxing stance, and it's basically the same moveset from the boxing minigame from the school stories. But here's the problem with the boxing stance. You have to pay extra for this thing. I know this didn't come out on launch, but you pay $5 extra and some like other stuff. But that other stuff is very minuscule. You're basically paying $5 for this boxing stance. What pisses me off is not the $5. That is actually pretty cheap. But what pisses me off is that they're locking away combat behind a paywall. And you can't even get most of the moves because you have to do the freaking side story, the school story boxing segment in order to unlock all of the freaking moveset. And even then, the movesets are so expensive, especially like the better ones. I don't know why I have to grind out after I paid money. If I'm gonna pay $5 for this stance, it should have just been fully unlocked. I don't understand why they just didn't give it for free. Maybe to squeeze out more money out of you, but come on. This is so ridiculous. Pisses me off about certain companies, and I hope this doesn't become a recurring thing because you're just locking away a moveset. And in Yakuza, the fighting is one of like the main components, and you're gonna lock it behind the paywall after the $60 that we already paid. I would be more angry if this game didn't have enough content as it does, because if it didn't, I would have given it way more crap. But this game already has a ton of content, so I'm willing to forgive it and give the extra $5 for the boxing stance. And is the boxing stance worth it? I'm gonna say yes and no. because it is the exact same moveset from the boxing minigame. It is not really much to even work with. So in that case, it might be leaning towards no. But on the battlefield, it does feel a little bit more fun. You are pretty quick with it. It's easier to dodge attacks. It's easier to counter. One of the essential things about the boxing stance is that it's easy to do combos with and switch between stances. It is relatively quickly, the quick steps are pretty fast, and it's pretty good at close combat. But I really do feel like they should have put more moves into it, because it does feel a little stiff because it's harder for you to move around in the boxing stance. So you constantly have to just switch out of it. But I feel like they should have put a little bit more effort into the boxing stance. I know it came after launch, but they should have put a little bit more if they delayed it. But overall, combat was great. I thought that this is possibly a contender for one of the best combats in all of the series, because it was just that much fun, and I honestly had a lot of fun just fighting everyone that I saw. And other game mechanics that this game tries to implement is a lot more detective based. You have a bunch of gadgets this time around. You have a noise amplifier to listen to conversations around the city. You get a transmitter that can pick up signals in certain segments of the story, or you can find items with this. And you have your drone from the first game, which is more viable this time around. You use it more often. And you even get a dog. You meet Rampo, a detective dog that can basically help you out during side missions to sniff out stuff that you can't find, or you can even just walk them around the city. And I love dogs, so this was just like a win in my book, and I honestly probably just gave it like an extra point just because there was a dog in it. There's other segments that they tried to basically lean more towards like the detective stuff. There's like stealth sections where you can knock out enemies and go traverse like a level, kind of like Batman in some ways. The AI is pretty stupid though, because sometimes you can clearly see that you're in the line of sight, but they just don't notice you. That's something that they probably should fix if they're gonna try this again. You have climbing sections. To me, the climbing sections were really unnecessary. I guess it's to make you more involved in how Yagami gets to point A to B sometimes. But to me, it kind of felt unnecessary. They should have just took this part out. It was tedious at sections, but it was kind of fun in other aspects. But I feel like they should have just taken that part out. Now let's talk about the story. To me, the story in Yakuza or these games is very, very special because it can make or break the game. Because to me, the story is the main purpose of these games. I will say that I did enjoy the story. I thought it was well done. I think that it was very entertaining from A to B. Overall, I thought it was good. But I do feel like it does get convoluted like towards like the middle of the game. I really do feel like that's the case most of the time. They try to introduce new plot points and new characters that just drive the plot all of a sudden too far into the story, and it gets to a point where I just kept questioning, why is this happening? Why aren't they focusing on the Ehara case so much? Because when you break it down, the Ehara sections throughout this whole game was really well done, especially the last chapter where everything just comes together with that case. It was so well done, this last chapter. But I feel like they should have done a better job of introducing these so-called like characters in power like they did in the first game, which is more well done in that aspect. But to me, it just felt pretty convoluted at times, and this was probably one of the hardest things for me to just review, because I don't know if it was just me who was feeling the confusion. So I went on the internet and I looked up some reviews to see what people thought about it. Some people gave it 100, 9, 10, just like basically saying that there's nothing wrong with it. But I did come across one review where it mentioned that it feels like this is a series that has gone for too many seasons. And to me, that's exactly how this feels like. Things take too long to get going. Some plot points are just very convoluted, make no sense when they're just thrown in there. They should have just overall just done a better job of setting things up and not making us feel confused, because that's what I've really felt. But overall, when it just gets to the nitty gritty, it is a well told story about the justice system being corrupted and the overall morality of murder and bullying. And overall, I think the last chapter probably is the best part of this game. I love the court case at the very end. Like, the last chapter to me was the best part of this game, and it's probably one of the best last chapters and one of the best boss fights that I've ever played. I love the music at the very end. It was so impactful, and most of the soundtrack in this game is top notch. Sega always nails the soundtrack for these games, and it just surprises me every time because it's always memorable, the soundtrack. And then you have all your side stuff. To me, I was a little sad that there weren't as many side missions. It was lacking in that department, and I kind of wish that they maybe put a little bit more. But it was fine because we had the school stories that basically replaced most of it. It's like a lot of the usual stuff is there, like gambling, batting cages. You have the return of the dice game, which is basically the Mario Party mode. Everything that you expect out of a Yakuza game is here once again, and it is always welcome. Now it's time for me to give the final verdict for Lost Judgment. Overall, I thought this was a great experience. I loved the story. I loved the combat. I know the story really needed some work, especially with like the inconsistencies and the tangents that it goes on, the unnecessary plot points, the unnecessary additions to characters that just throw off the entire story overall. That's how I felt, and sometimes I didn't stop playing for a little bit because the story just kind of didn't make any sense at the time. But I love this new direction that they're going in. I really do hope that the agency and Sega really do figure something out, because I want more of these. I really do want more of Judgment. I want more of Yagami. So my final verdict for Lost Judgment is an 8 out of 10. I wanted to give this a 10 out of 10. I really did. This is probably my favorite game I played throughout the whole year, but I would be lying to myself if I said it was a perfect game. It is not. There is quite a bit of flaws here and there, but overall it was a great game. I think you should go out of your way to try it. It was a lot of fun. If you want to play it, it should be on Xbox and PlayStation. I found out that this whole dispute was because that they didn't want it to be on PC, Lost Judgment, and that's why they're not making it anymore, which to me was a pretty dumb reason. But if you want to play it, it's on Xbox and PlayStation, so go check it out if you want. It was on sale recently, so many of you probably bought it already. But yeah, if you want to check me out on Twitch, I am currently playing Guardians of the Galaxy, and I will be reviewing that as soon as I finish that. If you want to go check me out, I'll leave that in the description. It's Real Rick Mandica on Twitch. Go check out the Gaming Spidey also on Twitch. I want to help him out. And also check out Fall 2 Wagon on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for stopping by. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, or whenever you watch this. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.